Hey there, I'm Jama, and over the past few years, I've become very interested in onomatology, the study of names. I've never really liked my name until I researched the meaning of it. My name means paradigm shifter, and I'd like to shift your paradigm by shining a light on onomatology and how it can potentially help you find your purpose, help you communicate better with others, or even both. In each episode, I ask someone 8 basic questions regarding their first name. So sit back, relax, and try to shift your paradigm with this next episode. This is a part 2 with Joy. Joy joined me on the podcast early on when I first launched it. And I feel terrible about this. I feel like as I did more and more episodes, I learned how to be a better podcast host. And me personally, I'm so curious about people just in general, and I forgot to ask a lot of like the first set of my participants a little bit more about themselves. I think it makes for understanding the person's answers a little bit better. So this round 2, I'm going to ask her a little bit about herself and then also go through a second set of questions and maybe talk more about some things that we have talked about previously. So welcome back to the podcast, Joy.
You, Jama. Yeah, no, I'm really excited to be back on. It was fun. So much fun when we first did this, and I'm excited for part two. And learning is all part of the progress, part of the process. So it's been fun just as a listener of your podcast, kind of seeing how it's evolved as well. It's been a lot of fun to be along for the journey.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad that you have been a part of it. So if you can, I'd love for you to share with the listeners a little bit about yourself. Like, what state do you reside in? Maybe like what do you enjoy doing? And like just maybe a random fun fact about yourself.
Sure. So starting with location, it's actually kind of funny because I do live in New York State, but as soon as I say New York, everybody thinks the city, which fun
Yeah.
fact about me, I'm actually equidistant from Boston, New York City, Washington, D.C., and like Columbus, Ohio. They're all about 8 hours away drive.
Oh, wow.
Not
Oh
from
my
distance
gosh.
wise, it's just the roads, there's no good way to get to New York City. So
Yeah.
I kind of think of myself as more in the Rochester, New York area, which is it's just around the lake from Toronto, actually. Toronto isn't too far away. It takes a while to drive there because you have to go all the way around the lake, but Niagara Falls
Yeah.
area, if that helps anybody who isn't familiar with the area.
Okay.
And yeah, it's a beautiful area, not a city exactly. There's a city
Mhm.
nearby, but I'm out in the country area, which I love.
Okay.
And
Awesome.
let's see, your second question was about kind of some of the stuff that I'm like passionate about, enjoy doing.
Hmm.
And yeah, I love to do a lot of different things. I just alluded to the fact that I live a little bit more in the country. I love the outdoors, love to hike, love to do anything kind of outdoorsy. But I'm also a creative. So I love to do things anything really creative with I mean, anything, art, cooking, you name it. I've probably dabbled in it a little bit. So I enjoy doing that in my spare time. Music as well. I'm also musical. So I love to do stuff with all of that. I'm pretty eclectic. I love to
Okay.
get into all kinds of things and even the sciences. I consider that to be creative as well. Love
Hmm.
to just do everything geeky and sciency and spiritual all the way to maybe a little bit more just getting out in nature. So kind of is wide. And then
Awesome.
one random fact about me. It's kind of hard because I am eclectic. Uh, well, here's something random and eclectic that people do not necessarily guess about me when they first see me, is
Mhm.
that I have worked in the railroading industry for 7.5 years at this point,
Oh, wow.
technology side of things.
That's
Uh,
awesome.
yeah, using data and stuff to optimize the way that things work. So that's been
Okay.
fun.
Very cool. I like that. Yeah, I would have never guessed that.
Most don't. I wouldn't guess
Awesome.
that, but it's been a fun ride.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And actually, I just thought of this question. I'm just curious, has there been any episode that you've listened to on this podcast that has really stood out to you that like kind of made you think in a different way or that just seemed interesting?
Well, I really enjoyed the one with your dad. That was fun.
Yeah, that's one of
Yeah.
my favorites for
Yeah, I
sure.
enjoyed that one.
Yeah.
Trying to think. Yeah, that probably one is the one that stands out the most to me. Uh,
Okay.
was that one. I kind of after that one I was like, "Huh, I've heard some of these things before, but I gotta maybe do a little bit more research."
Yeah.
So that was
Yeah,
fun.
for sure. He knows a lot about the word. He's been studying it for a while, so
Yeah.
it's always neat to have a conversation with him.
Yes.
Yeah.
No. I love seeing that, and I love seeing your relationship with him. It's just it was kind of fun the dynamic that you have with each other, and the
Yeah.
way that you could just kind of bounce off each other on the podcast. So that was fun.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks. And I like that. I'm really grateful that you have sent me some like sporadic messages with like some really cool, interesting things. And I want to bring up the message that you sent me a while ago about Numbers 13:16. And it talks about, I'm not going to pronounce this correctly. Hosea? I don't know.
That's how I pronounce it. I'm not like a scholar on how you pronounce things, but
Yeah.
phonetically,
Okay.
Hosea,
Yeah.
yeah,
Hoshea, the son of Nun, to Joshua.
yeah,
Um, and I'm so glad that you brought that up. I've read it before, but it didn't even register in my mind. Do you have any
right.
like thoughts about that name change as well, or what you took away from that verse that's related to it?
Yeah, well, I can say that one thing that has definitely happened since being on the podcast is any time that I see a name change in the Bible, I think of you. And usually I'll look up what the name
Hmm.
means because there's something deeper, there's something significant about it, I believe. And the interesting thing about the Hosea to Joshua, because I've been was just looking into it, was that Hosea means salvation, which that seems like a great meaning to a name. And then,
Yeah.
some of the ones that we talked about on the first episode of the podcast were, like, for instance, with Abraham and Sarai, God was the one who changed their names. I guess with Paul, Saul to Paul, it's just kind of like we don't really know how or why his name got changed, but it did. But
Yeah.
with Hosea, it says that Moses was the one who gave him a new name. And we know that, Moses met with God and he talked with God. So I do think that he definitely had some intentionality in changing his name, which looking into the meaning, so Hosea means salvation, whereas Joshua means God is salvation. So he
Yeah.
kind of brought God into the picture when he gave Joshua, his young aide, this new name. And Joshua went on to, he was Moses' successor. So he was
Hmm.
the one who actually took the people into the land that God had promised them. Moses didn't get to do that. It was Joshua who got to take it. But at the same time, I think that Moses was kind of seeing to a day in a couple of different ways, kind of prophetically. On the one hand, I think he was seeing to the day that it was not going to be Joshua who was going to really be saving the people. It had to
Hmm.
be God at the end of the day. The Israelites, there were a lot of them, but it says elsewhere in the Bible that they were honestly few in number compared to the people that they were, conquering the lands where they were going to. So it had to be God. They had to rely on God to actually be their salvation, to take them where they needed to go to see the promises that He had promised them. And then on the other side of that, I think that Moses was also seeing to a day prophetically of Jesus, because if you look at what Jesus's name was, actually, if you go back to like the original languages, it was actually Joshua. Also, God is salvation. So in the same way,
Yeah.
Jesus got to save people, and as God's son, one with the Father, he got to save God's people as God. And once again, it wasn't just a blanket, just bringing in, it's like, okay, salvation, yay. It was a real intentionality of God being salvation for us so that we could have relationship with him. That's kind
Yeah.
of the promise at the end of the day. So I think that it was, much as Moses was the one who got to name, who changed his name from Hosea to Joshua, I think that there was some real intentionality and some prophetic significance to it for sure.
Yeah. That's really powerful. I love that. I feel like I just learned so much more, like even just talking through it, you know? So
Yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah. It's really cool just kind of reading through the Bible. Currently, I'm reading through it chronologically. I love to study it.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of going through it chronologically and I'm kind of taking note a little bit of some of those name changes along the way. Or just sometimes, like I was just
Mhm.
recently reading that Solomon in the Bible, God had a different name for him. Obviously, he went
Mhm.
by Solomon, which means peace, but there's another name like Jedediah or something like that, that God
Hmm.
actually called him, which meant like something along the lines. I'm not sure I'm going to get this perfect, but it's something along the lines of because God loved him, he kind of gave him
Hmm.
another name that he didn't go by, which I'm
Yeah.
not sure why. Now I have questions, but it's
Yeah.
just really interesting. Everybody's story in the
It
Bible,
is.
why they had the names that they did, because it was
Yeah.
significant. And it kind of brings us to the present as well, where we have names, but maybe we don't think about the significance as much as they did back then.
I agree. And I think that I was like listening to you, but also processing. And I think that with these things reoccurring in terms of these adults where God is being incorporated into their new name. It's almost as if God is I'm not sure if I'll articulate it correctly, but it's almost like God is expecting us to change.
Yes.
And a part of changing is having and taking on a new identity or a new representation of who we are. And it's change is good. I know sometimes like in life, I've actually been struggling with change because my son, he's a senior in high school
Oh, yeah.
and it's been an emotional like bittersweet. I'm excited for him to start his next chapter. I mean, 'cause he's so smart. He's a great kid. He's going to be a great adult. But I
Yeah.
get so like also sad because I feel like he was just a little boy and he was on my hip for like, years. And so
Yeah.
it's like I think part of changing, it can be hard and it can be different and even taking on a new name can be such a change in your life, but it can also bring new, refreshing, if you will. I don't know.
Yeah. It's kind of like being uprooted almost. Sometimes transition can kind of feel like that, at which point,
Yeah.
I think in some of these people's cases, it's like their whole identity got changed. And we can kind of see, you know, we are all going to be changed. We're all in the process of being changed. We have
Yeah.
all been changed. It's kind of like a past, present, and future type of a thing. And, just in general in life, you're talking about your son, change is inevitable.
Yep.
Uh, and even if it's onto something good, even if it's onto something great, it doesn't mean that it's easy. And I think sometimes it can be easy to overlook that. Uh,
Yeah.
well, both in scripture and then also in the lives of people around us. Sometimes it's just like, yeah, this is life. It's expected. And it's like, doesn't mean that it isn't at our core uh,
Yeah.
something that's challenging, even if it's beautiful, right?
Yeah.
So,
For sure.
yeah.
Totally agree. All right. I do have some questions for you. Some
Sure.
actual set of questions. So I was curious, since doing the podcast, do you feel like your life has been like impacted by having that experience at all? And if so, I was just curious, like how has it been impacted?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I've always been interested in names for whatever reason. So, that hasn't changed. If anything, it has increased. But at the same time, I think one thing that the podcast did, and then also listening to the podcast did, was that I'm looking for it more, or I notice it in more places, the meaning of people's names and how it lines up with their identity, how it lines up with their character, what people choose to go by, even. And obviously, just mentioning a little bit ago how now when I read the Bible, it's like any time that I see a name where it says whether God is saying, hey, call the baby this, or whether you've got an adult who's going through a major transition and is like, yeah, and you're going to be known as this from here on out.
Yeah.
There's a number of them in the Bible, so I definitely am paying more attention to that, and it's been really cool to do that. I think also something because there's a few in my family. I think you interviewed a couple of my sisters. So
Yeah.
in my family, we kind of have a saying now. It's like whenever we run across somebody, the meaning of somebody's name or whatever, we're like, Jama would like that.
Oh, that's so
Yeah, so
nice.
we think of you every time.
Oh,
But it makes us
yeah.
curious too. It's gotten some cool conversations going about
Yeah.
the various meaning of names because I think for some people the meaning of their names feels more significant to some more than others. But I'd say it's always an interesting conversation whether somebody identifies strongly or whether it's something that they've never really thought about.
Yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying and can relate to it on a personal level because I've just started this study on the book of Matthew with my friend. We're actually breaking up this year into quarters. So we're going to just keep studying all the ways that we can and doing different Bible app plans on Matthew for the first quarter and then Mark, Luke, and John. So
That's cool.
breaking those up like that. And in Matthew, it's so interesting. We started this one plan on the Bible app. It's like something with the word healing in it. And it almost like compares the gospels with like the small section of Matthew. And I didn't even realize that Matthew's name was Levi,
Yes.
which means
There's another one.
joined or
Yep.
attached. And Matthew is gift of God. And I think I don't really know too much about it, but it was interesting how like Levi, they use that name in the other gospels outside of Matthew.
Hmm.
So I want to do more like research into that.
Yeah.
And then we
That's an
were all
interesting one.
it
Yeah.
is. Yeah. And then there was one part in Matthew that I came across that I thought was really interesting. It talks about how there was this woman who put perfume on Christ and
Right.
or oils, and he specifically wrote like this will be documented in the book in memoriam to her and what she did. But there's
Yes.
no recollection of her name. Some people, some scholars say it was Mary, one of the Marys, but I'm like, if it's in memorial to her, but they're not mentioning her name, I'm like, I guess it was God was speaking to me in the way that like what I took away from that was it doesn't matter what your name is. Like
Right.
God will
Right.
remember you and
Yeah.
remember your heart towards him. And that was like a shifting of a paradigm for me.
I like
So,
that.
yeah.
I like that. And part of it is that, no matter what your name, like, I don't know, you see people every day, then you don't know what their name is. I'm actually not very good at remembering people's names. It's something I'm trying to get better at. But you
Yeah.
can have like these wonderful experiences, these wonderful conversations with people, and then later you're like, I don't even know their name. It's like kids on a playground almost.
Yeah.
If ever had, I mean, you have kids, so I know sometimes you have kids who are like they have this best friend on the playground. They don't even know their name at times, definitely
Yeah.
run into that. And I think that the name is a little bit of it's something that points to your identity rather than actually being your identity. And I think that's why your name can be changed because it's something to point to your actual identity or something that God is doing in your life now.
Yes.
So I like what you're seeing there. That's cool.
I am curious, how often do you think about the meaning of your name since doing the podcast?
Well, I certainly think of it on a regular basis. Part of it is with a name like Joy. It kind of is self-explanatory what it means. It's not
Mhm.
something that you have
Yeah.
to think about too hard, and other people do as well. Like I have at times gone to the grocery store and people have commented on the meaning of my name. And some of them don't even know what my name is. They just are like, wow, you're just so joyful. And I'm like, yeah, actually, that's my name. And then they're like, wow. But I also get it as soon as anybody hears what my name is, they immediately jump to the meaning. So I've got people constantly reminding me of that, for one. But then for
Mhm.
myself as well, I'd say that I've definitely been on a journey for several years now of just being more intentional, I guess you could say, about this
Mhm.
identity that my name points to, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Because several years ago now, I was with somebody who, he's a really wise person, and he was kind of, we're having a conversation, and honestly, the main thing that he had to say to me was like, your name is really significant, important, you're just you are joy, you're so joyful or whatever. And I was a little bit like, well, tell me something that I don't know, if you
Yeah.
know what I mean, because it just didn't seem that significant to me because it's like, yeah, I know that, people tell me that all the time. But then afterwards, I was like, no, this is something that I need to pursue. I need to be more intentional about this. I need to explore what the meaning of joy really is. So that took me on a journey, and it's been great. Everything from the bliss of joy to joy and suffering and everything in
Mm.
between. And that's been really fun. So your podcast actually kind of came in the middle of that journey.
Mhm.
And so it was just kind of another step along the way where it was like, yeah, this is significant. This is important. This is pointing to something. So it's kind of fun to discuss it with somebody else like yourself and kind of have that conversation and just think a little bit more about it from the perspective of, well, I guess, I had always put an importance on my name, but just realizing that other people do as well on their names. And it's not just names that maybe have uh, a meaning that is very obvious, but also names that it's like maybe it's only really known to the person, or maybe that's not even known, but it really is significant to who they are as a person and points to who they are as a person. So it was been a really interesting study along the way. And I guess since the podcast, I've just been doing it more and more. So
That's
yeah,
great.
it's been great. It's been great
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely separate the words happiness and joy or
for
joyfulness.
sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's
Yes.
interesting, like I've been seeing my favorite social media platform is Instagram, and I've been seeing some reels about a lot of people uh, in their 20s and 30s, and they're coming to Christ after having a completely different lifestyle.
Sure.
And they're saying that old lifestyle, when I was not in a relationship with Christ, seemed to make me so happy. And now that I'm not in that old lifestyle, I sometimes miss it. My flesh misses it. But that's when I tap into joy, the joy of the Lord.
Yeah.
And I just find that to be the word joy so powerful because it is something that needs to be intentional, I believe. And I think that it has a lot of weight in it too. I feel like happiness is kind of like light, and then joy
Yeah.
is like, okay, no, I'm going to tap into this. So
Yeah.
I
Well,
find your name to be wonderful.
yeah, I like it. Oh, one
Yeah.
thing that's really interesting about what you're saying, though, is you're describing kind of a repentance, kind of an unto another life, unto a life that is filled with joy and a life that is free, right? Yeah, the reason that we're not doing these things anymore is because we're free. We don't have to do these things anymore. And it's
Yeah.
interesting, it's something that we quote a lot. It's in the Bible. The joy of the Lord is our strength. And it is,
Hmm.
joy and strength are often mentioned together in the Psalms. And in Hebrews, it says that for the joy set before him, Jesus endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the Father. Joy is what got him through that experience. But if you look at the around the surrounding of verses around the verse, the joy of the Lord is your strength. What was going on was that the Israelites had just comes back from captivity, and they kind of set stuff up. They'd set up, they were building the temple, rebuilding Jerusalem. This is great. And finally, they're getting some good teaching. So you have the priests and everybody there, and they're reading from the book of the law. And what they read there was making everybody weep. Everybody was just devastated because they realized that they had really messed up before God. And what happened was the leaders actually ran around to the people and were like, "Hey, stop. Don't cry, don't weep, because the joy of the Lord is your strength." And that is where we get that verse from. So it's actually a story of repentance. It's like if you're going to have the strength to actually get through this, to actually live out your freedom, you got to have joy. You've got to have joy because it is a inner strength that takes you really from glory to glory to that point that you get to experience um, the things of God in a way that is like, this is so much better. Yeah, it clears the way. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
even a fruit of the spirit. It's listed second, right after love. It's pretty
Yeah,
important to God. So it's been fun to explore that more. Just
very
finding
cool.
God's heart really in joy and in freedom.
I love that. Very cool. Well, and I was curious, kind of pivoting a little bit. Have you looked up the meaning of some friends, coworkers, or your family members? And when you looked up the meaning, have you been like, oh, I can see that in a way?
Definitely some. In some
Okay.
cases, like I know what they meant. So, like after the podcast, just kind of thinking, or if you interviewed a few people who had the same name as various family members or friends, and just kind of thinking, is like, yeah, that kind of fits them or whatever. Some people was especially so.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly when, let's say, friends have babies, I will oftentimes look up what the name means if the parents don't like share that. And some parents share that as part of the birth announcement. But
Yeah.
sometimes it's just interesting because sometimes the parents are really intentional about it. This is how they kind of see their their kid. And then other times, maybe they just like the sound of the name. But I do think that it's powerful. Uh,
Yeah.
it's amazing how often we do become like our names,
Yeah.
somehow. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I've definitely looked up various names at times.
Okay, cool. Well, and my last question, what ultimately did you take away from the experience of doing the podcast and talking about your name?
The experience, I would say that, well, for one thing, I had not realized that there was a study about this. I knew it was something that some people kind of tapped into. I mean, even tapped into in kind of like some people can make things that are just part of life a little bit weird. uh,
Mhm.
and I knew that some people, thought about it a lot when they named their kids or whatever. But I'd say that the main takeaway that I took was just that this is something that is really a lot more part of our lives and the lives of people in the Bible as well, way more than I had really comprehended or thought about. And so from there, I'd say that that has kind of caused me to think a little bit differently when I come across people's names and just what they represent and who that person is. Because I love what makes people who they are, just kind of getting to know them from that perspective.
Yeah.
So it's another aspect of that. Honestly, I think that's been a interesting, I guess, paradigm shift, you could say,
Yeah.
in my thinking. Particularly when reading scripture or whatever. So it's been cool.
Nice. Well, that's great to hear. And I really, really appreciate talking to you about this. I feel like it helps me understand more about you and other names that we've talked about. So I appreciate our conversation. And do you have any questions for me? Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, well, thank you. No, I really appreciate the opportunity to get on here and talk with you. This has been fun, and it's always fun to just kind of think about these things, geek out a little bit, and the specifics of an area like names.
Yeah.
Any questions for you? Let's see. I don't know that I have any. I guess one question I might have for you is as um as you've been putting these podcasts together and kind of looking at the data and stuff, how has that changed you and the way that you approach meeting people for the first time?
Hmm. That's a good question. I feel as though the more people I interview, I do always try to remain very humble in terms of not making assumptions, even based upon just knowing the meaning of their name. Because as we all know, like each person is so unique, and each person is raised in a unique way. So I try to really stay open-minded but the data is showing me that a lot of Americans especially they truly don't know what their name means. A lot of it is very surfacey in terms of people just know the aesthetics of a name or chose a name because of the aesthetics. And so, in talking with certain people, when they, it's like there's so many aspects of it because when
Hmm.
somebody doesn't know their name, the meaning of it, I get excited to tell them. I'm like, oh my gosh, I get to
Yes.
share this with you.
Yeah.
And then, but when they do know their name, I feel like the conversation can be a little bit more fruitful because it's
Sure.
not like they just learned it and now they have to answer that number seven question, which is the big one of how does it impact your life or do you feel like it has? And I don't know. Yeah, I would say it's just a lot of people don't really know and I think that they a lot of people and the majority of people that I talk to or mention about my podcast, they're like, that's so cool. Like that's so
Yeah,
interesting. So I think it's something that people are interested in. I'm going to keep
I
doing
think
it and
so.
I'm thankful for it because I do feel like this ultimately is a gift that God handed me,
Yeah.
and He's allowing me to meet people and learn about people and have a heart for people. So I'm just ultimately at the end of the day, I'm just really grateful. So,
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And totally get you on you really can't reduce people to data, having worked with data. But at the
yeah.
same time, it can it can lead to knowledge, it can lead to kind of wisdom in situations. So it's really cool. And yeah, it leads to experiences too. Like I know just last week actually I was in Florida and I was going to be rooming with somebody that I had not met before at this retreat that we were at. And, she comes into the room for the first time and, you don't know how this is going to go. You're kind of feeling it out. And her first thing was like, yo, your name is Joy. That's so awesome. And she's going to the meaning of it. And so my return to her was like, well, what does your name mean? And she didn't know. And so we Googled it right then and we were just like diving into the meaning of her name. And pretty soon we're talking about how this just like right fit into her testimony and all the stuff that God had saved her from recently. And she was just so excited and we had a great time talking to each other. And it all started with a conversation about what our names mean. So
Yeah.
that's always fun.
Yeah. It's a great way to connect with someone for
It
sure.
is.
Yeah.
Yes. So I'm so glad that you put this podcast together and that you've been doing this and that this has been something that God has given you because yeah, I totally it's so intriguing. And everybody who I know who's listened to your podcast is like, yeah, it's so interesting. So it's been
Yeah.
great. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I've loved to watch your journey with the podcast. I got to catch up. I haven't listened to
Mhm.
the latest yet, so I should do that.
Okay. Well, thank you. I really appreciate you. And I appreciate your family and just your support and kindness. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to subscribe or follow the podcast on your favorite platform. Your support helps me continue bringing you meaningful conversations with remarkable guests. Don't forget to tune in next time for more insightful discussions and inspiring stories. Until then, thank you for listening and keep striving to make a positive impact wherever you are. And don't forget to tap into the meaning of your own name to find a deeper sense of confidence in your purpose.